that. All right. Video. Okay. Can you see her?
Yeah.
Is.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you are of the tradition to be lighting candles as you lead in this season, this candle for the second week is known as the Bethlehem candle. And depending on your tradition or your background, you may know it as the week of love or the week of faith. And when I was looking online, like I Googled all this stuff, I found that it was kind of diverse. Different people believe different things. So as I was looking into the idea of the Bethlehem candle, it's really about preparation, preparing the way for the Messiah to come into the world. And as I was thinking about that, the idea of faith really caught my attention because the Old Testament prophets prophesied that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. And at the time, Mary and Joseph were not living in Bethlehem. They were living in Nazareth, another town. And they would have had to make the journey to Bethlehem. And so I started to wonder about what God was doing behind the scenes. And in the Bible, it simply says that a census was taken and that one had not been taken for quite some time. And so I feel like God was just like working behind the scenes, prompting someone's heart that a census needed to be taken so that Joseph, who was a Bethlehem native, would have to come back to his hometown for the census. Now, this was not an easy journey for them. It was probably about 90 miles, which would have taken them up to a week of walking. And we know that Mary was near the end of her pregnancy. This could not have been an easy journey for her. And every time we picture this of Mary and Joseph walking, what do you picture? You picture Mary on a donkey. Now, the Bible never says that she had a donkey to ride on. I think that's just something that we've added in there so it looks like Joseph was like a nice guy and gave her a donkey to ride on. But the likelihood is that she could have walked that 90 miles, fully pregnant. There are hills as you lead into the Bethlehem area. There would have been a bit of difficulty in actually getting there. And then they get to Bethlehem and there's no place for them to stay. They end up sleeping in a stable. And I was just thinking about this journey and about her as a woman. I mean, I have 4 kids. I've been pregnant 4 times. There's no way I would have wanted to walk 90 miles fully pregnant. And I just think about like what might have been going through her mind and just wondering like, God, this is difficult. Why do we have to do this at this time? But in all of that, God was working to bring his promise to pass. And so even when things are difficult in our lives, we have to remember that God is making a way. And even when we don't understand why or how it's going to play out, God is at work. And that's what faith is all about. That's my personal definition of faith, is being able to trust in the character of God when I can't see the activity of God. This is really important because there's so often that we would not know or understand what God is doing. And that's actually what faith is. If we understand and we know what he's doing, we don't need faith, right? But faith means that I can trust his character. I can trust that he's working. I can trust that he's faithful. I can trust that he's doing something behind the scenes that I can't see or understand because I trust him. And so I love this idea. And God works in ways we don't expect. He also works in ways that we would likely never choose, but he always works. We can trust that. You can take that to the bank. That's what my dad used to say. You can take that to the bank. You can trust in the fact that God is at work, even if your circumstances are difficult, even if it looks like it's like tragic all around you, he's at work. And I want to remind you of this. Our faith is always being tested. Faith is given to us. God says he gives each of us a measure of faith, but he also compares our faith to like a grain of mustard seed, which is this tiny, tiny little seed. And faith is given to us, but we have to steward the things in our life well and walk through some things, often testing and difficulty, in order for our faith to grow. The Bible is really clear that we're going to face tests and trials of many kinds, but they are going to grow our faith. Some of the tests that we come up against are suffering and opposition, obstacles, waiting. These are all things that even the ancient people from the Old Testament had to walk through in order to test their faith. I often think of the disciples, and there was several times where Jesus turned to them and said, "Oh, you have such little faith." And I used to think that that was like a rebuke, that he was like, "Oh, like, come on, you're so dumb. Why do you have such little faith?" But I actually don't think that's what it was at all. I think he was saying, "Oh, you have little faith." But I don't feel like it was a rebuke. I feel like it was an invitation. It was an invitation to allow their faith to grow. Jesus said, even if you only have faith as small as a grain of mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, be moved. You could say to this obstacle that's standing in your way, you could speak to the mountain that stands in your way today and say, be moved, if you have just a little bit of faith. Little faith isn't a rebuke. It's an invitation to grow. And sometimes I feel like we have a little bit of faith, and maybe we feel like we have a little bit of faith, but a little bit of faith is enough faith. Whenever Jesus said that to the disciples, he still responded to their need. He still showed up and did what they needed to be done in the moment, even though they only had a little bit of faith. And I just want to remind you today that whatever it is you're facing, whatever it is you're up against, you have everything you need to stand in this storm. You have everything you need. You are well equipped. You have enough faith. You have everything you need to stand. God makes sure of that. He always prepares us for the things that we have to walk through. And here's something that I've learned to say, and I just want to leave you with this thought today. I've learned to always say, God, I trust you. I say it probably several times a day to him. When I come up against a hard situation, when I have to walk into a hard conversation, when I see things in my life that don't look like I planned for them to be, God, I trust you. I don't understand, but I trust you. I can't see what you're doing, but I trust you. I don't know how you're going to show up in this situation, but I trust you. I didn't think I'd be here at this point in my life, but I trust you. I didn't think my marriage would look like this, but I trust you. I didn't think my kids would be where they're at, but I trust you. And I have to keep reminding myself of that every day. And I want to encourage you to put that in your vocabulary as well. God, I trust you. I can't see what you're doing. I don't know where you're working, but I trust you. Would you reveal yourself to me? And hold on. Hang on. God is at work. I feel like this is what it means to live the everyday Advent when it comes to hanging on by faith.
Oh, did you watch that video in advance?
Me?
Yeah,
No, I've not seen it.
because then that was the Holy Spirit that you brought up the question about the difference between faith and trust, because she was about that a little bit.
Yep, and apparently I was wrong, because she's equating faith and trust to be synonymous.
Not quite.
I
The
didn't
training
think
I
so.
got as a
She
we got
spoke
two
often of
inputs.
she has trust in the Lord. She trusts. She didn't say faith, she said trust.
Oh, I don't think she's a very precise speaker, for one thing. I mean, she's an interesting, it's interesting to see what she has to say, but I don't think that she speaks with great precision. And so I think probably she was using them as synonyms without recognizing the nuance that can be drawn between them. Yeah. But-
Well, and I also think that you have to believe in God, i.e. have faith in him in order to trust him. So but I do agree, she did kind of equate the two, but I think our discussion, kind of brought out the differences in them. So I have never before we get into the question that we want to talk about, never before reflected on the fact that God was working in the hearts of people to make the census happen. Like when you think about that, that's just wild. I mean, he's always working, but to think about that the scripture said he was going to be born in Bethlehem, so he had to get him to Bethlehem.
I have to admit a discomfort with that reading. I mean, I understood what she's arguing, but it seems to me, at least for myself, I have great faith in the benevolence of God, but I don't see him as a kind of puppet master organizing historical events that, like he's moving chess pieces around the board or something like that. And that's a particularly difficult example because it's one of those areas where there's the most dispute about the narrative, about whether there was actually a census, and if so, when was it? And so I'll confess my discomfort with her kind of saying, well, this happened and it happened because God planned it that way. There are a lot of things that happen that I wouldn't blame God for planning.
Okay.
And I've always just, okay, now I'm talking. I've always looked at it as if God knew what was going to happen. And he just, because all eternity, God does not deal in time. So in my view, so he just revealed what was going to happen because he already knew how it was going to unfold. And I think that's different than, as you said, Paul, him causing things to happen. Because I don't know, but my belief is that things happen and we're given the ability to make something better out of that than what could be. You can either be crushed by something or you can be made stronger by it. And I think for me, relying on that faith, it makes me stronger, knowing I will get through this. Everything is going to be okay.
I'd like to say something going back to the equating of faith and trust. Something I heard that really spoke to me many years ago was the notion that trust is a process of clinging, or I'm sorry, trust is a process of clinging to what you believe will happen. And faith is a process of letting go of all expectations about what's going to happen and trusting another power, just that it's going to be okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. That was awesome.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
So I want to go kind of start the reflection on a question here, and ask folks to describe a time when your faith was tested.
What was that again? Describe what?
When your faith was tested.
Describe what?
A time when your faith was tested. And I guess I've shared some. I'll share one. Leaving Dell. I didn't leave on my own terms. I left right during the pandemic. It wasn't on my terms, and I couldn't conceive of a life not working and leading a team, and just what I did. It was part of my. It was a core part of my identity, and took me a long time to accept that God didn't want me to go back to work in that way. I wasn't going to stay at Dell. I wasn't going to go find another company. It took me, maybe a year and a half. Probably wasn't until mid-21. And I went kicking and screaming. And I look back now, and I used this analogy with somebody today. And if you know people that work for Dell, they might say this as well. I don't know, Nancy, if this is how Kevin feels. But I honestly believe that when you work at Dell, it's like the frog in the water. You don't realize how awful it is till you leave. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't miss it at all. So God did, he was at work the whole time and I kicked and screamed and fought him. And yeah, I'm happy where he brought me.
Okay.
All right, Amy, I'm gonna start calling names.
I think Lori was about to share.
Oh, okay, Lori, go ahead. Lori and Mike.
Right. Well, about I don't know how many years ago it was. Mike was working for Lockheed here in town, and it was a good job, and he loved it. And all of a sudden, Lockheed merged with Martin Marietta, and they said, if you want your job, it's in Denver. Well, we had already moved out of Texas for a couple of years because my job at the library went down the tubes. And so Mike very graciously offered to find something that he could do until I kind of got back on my feet. And so when the call came that, you know, he should go to Denver because the job was there, I thought, I'm not taking my children out of Texas. Now, those of you who come from other states, lived in other states, don't quite maybe get it. But my family's been in Texas since the 1820s, and I was raised in the household of my grandmother, that was my direct line to her mother and her grandmother, and, you know, all the way back. And I just thought, I can't take my children out of Texas again. And so we just went on faith that Mike would move to Denver and Lori would stay here with the kiddos. And I thought, I don't know how it's going to work. I'm just going to try to make it work. And the Lord led us, and here we are. So anyway, I guess the reward is now that we're both retired, we're roommates again, which is wonderful. So that's my faith story.
I love it. Okay, Nancy, you turned your camera on. Did you have something to share? Okay. You
No,
can
not yet.
Huh? Not
No,
yet?
not
Okay.
yet.
All right, I'm coming back to you, AL.
Okay, so I'll share. So, and I think about this a good bit. So I really basically, I mean, my life basically tanked after college. And it's a very kind of involved story, but the short story is just that I was a real top performer in college. I went on scholarship to law school, and that was not the right place for me. And there was a lot going on in my life. So then I quit. And that was something that there was just a whole lot that was wrong at that time on a variety of levels. And I think, and I mean, this is a really this is a key point for my faith development, because at the time when things were falling apart slowly, but not that slowly, I was praying all the time, right? So I was praying all the time because I knew things were not, I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of insight, but I was like really depressed, and I didn't know that. I was really young, and I just kept going, right? And so I kept praying, and I mean, I was praying like a lot, but then everything just completely fell apart. And and I had really set ideas of who I was going to be, how my life was going to unfold, right? All of that. So there was quite a steep learning curve as time went on for me in just trying to make a life and have it all work and come to terms with a variety of stuff. And so one of the things that I struggled with a lot and was this, which was, what am I doing when I pray? Okay. What am I doing? And so is this a wish, right? A wish that things would be a certain way. And when I think back on that time, there was a lot of wishing. This is probably a lot heavier than what you had in mind. But anyway, so there's just it's an interesting time to be where I am now, and how my faith has matured. But I still am very careful when I pray to ask myself, is this a wish that I just want, this thing I want, right? Or the way I want things to be? Or is this actually a turning to God? So I think of prayer as a turning to God, and how to do that. And that is a way of praying that works for me, that way of conceiving of it works for me, because I feel like on some fundamental level, I'm being genuine.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. Paul, I'm just going as you guys are appearing in my tiles.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you guys to keep it a little short because we've only got 22 minutes, but go ahead, Paul.
Well, okay. I'm the right one to warn. I guess for me, the question is, what faith? If we're talking about, assume we're talking about faith in God and how has it been tested, I think that I don't really know how to answer it, because I'm not certain I know what my faith in God is, for lack of a better way to word that. I don't know I've ever been tested, because my life has been so easy and so blessed. I've been incredibly lucky. I've never suffered any real defeat, or I haven't been a brilliant success, but you know what I got no complaint here. I'm in my 80s, and everything in my life has worked out like it's a dream come true. And so, and that's, in some kind of fundamental existential sense, my faith has never been tested. At a more mundane level, my faith is tested regularly, particularly as I get older and the specter of disease and death looms on the horizon. Every time I have a medical emergency or crisis, my first thought is, why is this happening to me? Who's in charge here? Why did this happen? So, I can honestly say I've had my faith challenged, but I guess I just have to gratefully say it's never been tested.
Well, thank you. Jan?
I can never forget to unmute myself. I've been fortunate to grow through a lot of faith enrichment at St. Luke's, 4 rectors, and most specifically Roland Timberlake and Alice Jean. But I can remember I had very bad eyes, and my vision, I couldn't, without correction, I couldn't see the big E on the pie chart. I knew it was there, but I couldn't really tell you that it really was an E. And I went to a guy that I've been going to for a long time at Texas State Optical, and they're just opticians, and he noticed something in my eye, and he said, "I've got an appointment for you with an ophthalmologist, and you don't get appointments with an ophthalmologist in the next 30 minutes." And he said, "You will be there within an hour." And so the ophthalmologist does all his magic and whatnot, puts this big magnifying glass. Anyway, he said, says, "I made you an appointment at Methodist Hospital tonight. And so I started from like 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock or 1 with him. And so I call my secretary and say, you need to make me a reservation on Southwest, and you need to get a hold of my wife and tell her that we're going to Dallas tonight. And so I had never seen this ophthalmologist. I had never even talked to Methodist Hospital. My wife didn't even want to take the call. Finally, somebody said, you need to listen to this. So we finally got on the airplane, got to Dallas, went to the hospital, and sure enough, they recognized me after sitting there for 30 or 60 minutes. And the doctor, who I had never seen, never talked to, and whatnot, said, well, we're going to operate in the morning. And so through all of this, I'm just like, what's going to happen? I have no idea what's going on. You know, I've never talked to any of these people. All this stuff's been provided for me, but I have no idea what's going on. And then the doctor came in and he did some stuff and he explained to my wife, because I don't think I ever understood anything. And then he said, they've got you in a semi-private room, but you don't want to do that. We'll get you a private room. Your wife we'll get her a bed there, because we don't want her to go to the Holiday Inn down there because it's a really bad area. And I can remember going into getting on the gurney and going into the operating room, that I just had complete peace. I don't know that I've ever had that kind of peace before. I know that I've had some stuff go on, and Roland Timberlake had come in and he always gave you a Silver Cross to go into whatever you were having done, but he wasn't there. And it's just like, I know it's going to work. It's going to be fine. And sure enough, it was.
Wow.
I don't know how to explain it other than I had been brought up to have faith, and it served me at that time.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing. That's a beautiful story. Kim Hall, or are you not sharing tonight? Okay. Laura, you shared. Mike, did you have anything to share? Mahaffey?
No, Laura, you
think
did a great
we've been-
job for me.
Okay, good. How about you, Eric?
I am not thinking of a good story,
Okay.
of a good event or test.
You can yell it out later. How about you, Nancy?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a pass for a minute.
Okay. Well, you know, when I thought of this question, Nancy, one of the things that came to me that you and I have never personally talked about, but you shared a little bit on here, is Kevin's battle with leukemia. I mean, that just, yeah, I think about that. So, Carol.
All I know is that when I've been through trying times, I've always believed that everything would be okay, and it has. I would not go back and change one iota of my past life, because I'm very content and very happy. I don't like that word. I'm very content with where I am and who I know and my family and everything around me. And I know that if any of that had been any different, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So no complaints.
That's a beautiful testament. That really is. Thank you. All right, Dave and Kim. I like how you two look at each other. That was cute.
I don't have one specific incident that where I'd say my faith was tested, but I have a lot of small ones. I come from a family that is just genetically predisposed to worry. I get it genetically, and that's something I've always had to fight with all my life. And when I fall into, a period where I'm up half the night worrying about something, I have to call myself back to faith. That falling into that is testing my faith to see if it's still going to be there. Because faith and worry don't go well together.
Right.
It's so I would say it gets tested a lot in that regard. And sometimes that goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well,
That's wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah. Worry definitely is a lack of faith. But I do the same thing. It's like, why am I worrying? It's not going to change anything.
Right, exactly. So that's, in some respects, maybe that's God testing me to see if my faith will hold. I don't know.
That's beautiful.
Well, I've been blessed. My faith hasn't been tested per se, but it has certainly not been a smooth road all along. My father died when I was in a junior in high school. I never stopped believing in a God. I was just too mad to talk to him. Um, I've been blessed. There's certainly been challenges, and there've been struggles. And looking back on them, I realized, hey, look, there's only one set of footprints in the sand. I've been carried, and I know that. I sometimes struggle with the whole let go and let God. The prayer that I do every morning is Lord, take the reins, guide me. And I acknowledge in that prayer, I will probably in 30 seconds be fighting you for those reins. But nevertheless, I hope I never get that kind of a challenge that would make me doubt that there is a God.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to challenge you to change it from God take the reins to belting out Jesus take the wheel.
Trust me, you don't want that at all.
I am a man
don't
of
want
few
that.
gifts. I am a man of very few gifts, but surely the one that I'm least likely to have or be accused of is a singing voice.
Okay, well, it's a thought. You'll think of it tomorrow, though.
I like the song. I just can't do it.
All right, Chris, you're up.
Oh man. So I lost my first pregnancy at 13 weeks. And I kept thinking about it was a situation where well, I don't know if I need to get into it all. But I kept thinking about that, blessed are those who mourn, for they'll be comforted. And I kept thinking, well, I'm a woman of faith. I believe in God. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna be comforted, and it's gonna happen. No. About 2-3 weeks out, I'm back with, was it David that said got mad? God didn't want to talk to him. Well, I was talking. I was mad. I'm like, where's my comfort? I believe in you. I believe in you. Why is there no comfort? Where's the comfort? And it was kind of interesting how it all played out, but I kind of had to get to a certain point of, I guess, I don't think I got the words to describe it, but something happened where it's like an inside sort of something broke in a way. Like, I guess they call that letting go. I don't know if it's just giving up your will of how you decide things should be. And it was there that like a lot of like, I don't even gonna get into it here, but I had like a very religious experience, and I continue to be blessed by to this day. So I was comforted powerfully, but it wasn't when I was demanding it. It came when I pivoted.
Wow, that's amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you. All right, Kim C. And how did Elise's exam go?
I think it went well. She texted me as soon as she was done with it. And she said she was done. And I said, how'd it go? Did it go okay? And I get the yeah. So I don't get a lot, but it was so I figured that went pretty good. It went fine, I think. So
Awesome.
yeah. Okay. So I had to really think about this because it's hard to pinpoint just like one particular time. But I guess kind of more recently, one of the more challenging times was I guess right as my oldest daughter Allie was finishing high school, and I was looking, well, you know, kind of, it was a real busy year. That senior year was really the busiest year we've ever had. And so spent a lot of time with her. And so I was kind of looking forward to, you know, okay, she's got into college, and, you know, maybe now I'll have a little bit more one-on-one time with Elise after this busy senior year. But then right as all that was happening, my dad got sick. He had this trigeminal neuralgia flare. And so I was at work, they called me, I go to the hospital and, you know, spend time with him there, and he goes home, but he just isn't getting any pain relief. So it was really, you know, just tough on my mom. And she has anxiety, depression. So it was really like a big drain on her. And, you know, he wasn't getting any relief, and she was calling me all the time at work and all the time. And, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with your dad. And you know, it was just craziness. And so I was really stressed. And yeah, but I mean, you know, all through this, it was just very challenging trying to manage all this, and then also not being able to do what I thought I was going to do, is have more time for Elise, because now I was dealing with parents. You know, but I never lost faith. I never quit praying. I never stopped believing or doing any of those kind of things. But it was just a real challenging time where I had to lean on God and Jesus. And then, you know, it's a really long story, but I'll just try to like make it shorter. So I finally did a lot of research to help find an alternative kind of therapy to help my dad. And we went through cyberknife therapy, and he almost was like 100% pain free. And as soon as he got better, my mom fell apart. And so she kind of, she had to get into the hospital. She was having, it would just cause so much mental drain on her. So then we kind of worked through her, going through a period of time. It was just a very stressful period of time. And now, you know, after working through all this, and everybody is happy and healthy. My parents are doing wonderfully, both of them. And it was very challenging and stressful. So I guess that would be like a strain, but I've never had a point in time in my life where I've just like, I've given up on God, even if sometimes I've not been, you know, always like, I've always gone to church, but there have been periods of time where maybe I've done 10 churches regularly, but I still never stopped praying daily. So
Well, thank you for sharing.
that's my story.
All right, Kay.
I I was thinking about various times in my life when things, it tends to be with faith when things haven't gone well physically, I think often, as opposed to there are times in terms of job and stuff, things haven't always been perfect, but for me, one of the, as I'm thinking about this, for me, one of the things that I think is just really hard is how is it that things will happen to people sometimes and they don't happen to other people, and in a more specific sense of like in my family during I was born during World War II, and so many of my relatives served, and most of them didn't die in the war. One of them did. But how is it that, and if you were in peacetime, if you were in the States and you didn't have to go overseas, you're more likely to survive than if you went overseas. And then just recently, with what happened in Austin, I find my faith is challenged when I think about the fact that in general, in my life, I've lived in peacetime, and I've lived even when I had a family that was volunteering in war, it didn't have a direct negative impact on me. And then there are these people like, yesterday in Austin and San Antonio, there was this gun violence. And all of a sudden there are these people who'd lost their lives. And I just think about that, Paul and I have these 2 grandchildren. That's why we moved here. And I think the people who just died, they were somebody's children. They're related to somebody. And I think the kind of randomness of when people are okay and when people are struck down, I find challenging.
Yeah, that's a great.
That's in a kind of in a large sense, that there's a unfairness to life that I find hard to deal with. And I just think, how would I feel if in the elementary school that the elementary school that our grandchildren were going to was one that, like the one in Uvalde.
Yeah.
It's just, that those kids didn't deserve what happened to them. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's a great point. Anybody who didn't get to share want to share? Well, again, I'm going to stop recording and take prayer requests, but I want to just thank you all for the vulnerability and the sharing, and just the open discussion about faith too, and encourage you to take it into the week. I don't know if any of you guys are doing an Advent practice, but take the thought of faith into your prayer tomorrow and ask God where, because there's places sometimes where we don't realize that He wants to grow our faith. So just maybe take it into conversation with God. And let me stop recording. Where's that? Stop recording. Okay, prayer requests.